Good to see such a big audience. I know it's late on Friday. I hope as many of you as possible have already had your first beer. The organizers asked me to please turn off the mobile phones and switch them to silent so I won't be interrupted. And I guess that's it. Let's get started so we can head off and do something fun. So right, I'm Sulka Haro. I'm working at a company called Sulka, which is a Helsinki, Finland-based games development company. I'm the lead concept designer working on Habbo Hotel. And I'm here to talk about the evolution of Habbo Hotel's virtual economy over the years. So firstly, what is Habbo? And a couple of words about why I think it is an interesting product to talk about in regards to the virtual economy. So it's a virtual world for teenagers. Majority of the audience we're seeing in Habbo is age 12 to 17. And we're seeing about 50-50 gender split, so it's very equal and approachable to most of the teenagers. And the business model that we're operating on is the classic free-to-play, pay-for-stuff model, where the core play doesn't actually cost you anything. You just log in and enjoy the game, and if you want to, you can actually give us money and get the more fun experience. And the monetization happens with microtransactions, so core model being that when you sign up, you get this room as a user, and it's fairly blank and boring, after which you could go and start browsing the item catalog we have in the game, where there's items inside, bought with the credits. So you can browse through and check, like this pretty old movie actually, but that's the Valentine's selection of items that we had online a couple of years ago. And there's like wallpapers and different floor styles you can choose into your room, and pretty big selection of items, like a couple thousand items in the catalog right now. And once you've been doing the picking and buying, you might have something a bit more fun. So it's the same room, but decorated with the items that we're selling you. And here's a couple of examples of the kinds of stuff that we're seeing in the service right now. So here's a hospital that someone built. All the items here are like stuff we've created that the users bought and arranged for a game. And the way it works, like other people like walk in, and it's like free-form hospital play where some of the players are role-playing that they're sick, and other players are role-playing that they're actually working at the hospital and taking care of the patients. And here's a second room where it's like a beach that someone built, where you can go and enjoy it, lie down in one of the chairs. Imagine you're in a virtual beach having fun, taking in the sun. And like the sales of this stuff it's a good business. So in like the latest public figure we have is for 2008, where we sold about like most of the money coming into the company came in from the microtransactions. We did $74 million worth of revenue. So it's a significant amount of money we're pulling in from this stuff. And then we're doing this globally. We have offices in 13 countries, and we're actually the service itself is aimed at people in 31 countries in 6 continents. So we're seeing all kinds of different purchase behavior here. And we have totally 16 instances as well, which means there's a total of 16 virtual economies that we're actually managing as part of the operation. Each one of these really is separate. And because they've been launched at different times, it also means that each one of these economies is actually on a different, or it hasn't developed quite as far as the others. So the dynamics we're seeing in the individual one of these economies is actually different. And it's fairly fascinating to see the trends emerge in each one of them as they get older. How we're doing right now, the latest stuff I can say about how we're doing, the usage levels and the monetization levels are actually better than ever, which is good. The current numbers that we're seeing is 16.5 million uniques per month. A year ago, when I was giving the same talk, we were seeing 11.5 million. So with the concurrent numbers are seeing healthy growth. And there's about 50 million hours of play per month right now. And we really have been doing this for a long time. So we're turning 10 years old, or Habbo turned 10 years old this year. And I'm pretty proud of the fact that we're actually doing it as well as we are, given that most of the virtual worlds that are as old as this have withered away at much younger age. So if we go back to year 2000 when we started, like the mobile phones weren't quite as sophisticated as they are now, even though like you could still send in the SMSs and pay us with them, and the hot consumer electronics weren't that hot at all. compared to this year when like the iPhone actually allows you to run a virtual world in your pocket, which was something that most people in 2000 didn't even dream of. And certainly the amount of virtual worlds has grown dramatically over the years. So when we came out, there practically weren't any virtual worlds aimed at teenagers at all, and now there's several hundred of them. And obviously when the market changes, you need to change with it or die, and hence the evolution of the economy. So we've been changing the service throughout the years quite a bit in order to match the conditions that have been changing in the market. So what I'll be covering today, there's 6 phases that I think we've been going through in the development of the system. I'll be saying a couple bits about the payment network integration that we have in place, and then talking a couple words about the magic circle that it used to be the red herring of game design. So the phases, the first one being like we used to start out with no currencies at all, which is kind of interesting for a virtual world, but it was kind of logical for 2000 when there really weren't virtual currencies, or it wasn't talked about that much at that point. Then we got the emerging currencies, which then switched over to having a paid currency. Then we enabled it to be tradable. Then switch over to dual currencies, and the latest phase that we're actually going through now is fairly new, where we actually are middling with the secondary economy in the service itself, with the officially secondary market. So let's get into the details. Phase 1, no currencies at all. So back in the day when we launched, we launched in Finland, and the service wasn't even called Habbo Hotel way back then. So it was called Hotelli Kultakala, which is a like Finnish word for hotel goldfish. And we invented, or it like started out with the persistent goods model right from the start, where people bought persistent goods with SMS microtransactions. So you sent in a message that basically had the Habbo keyword and then the name or the item they wanted from the service and the name of the user that was supposed to receive the good, and texted that, and you just got the item in world. So there wasn't a virtual currency at all. And the reason we chose this is fairly simple, because the setup was just super easy. And back in Finland at that time, like practically everybody had mobile phones already, and the premium SMS networks actually did work really well. And the assumption was that if we lowered the customer acquisition barrier as low as possible, like it would be good business, which it of course was. But we pretty quickly hit a couple of problems. Firstly, there was a social engineering attack on this. So the teenagers are pretty ingenious about coming up with attacks on any system that you do. So what people did is like they started signing up characters with names that look like they were part of the official code, and telling stuff like here, like if you send this like 100x and then you name, you're going to be getting like 100 times the item. And of course this wasn't true, so there's a hacker called 100x that got the chair when you sent it the message. But kids are pretty gullible and greedy often if they're about to get something that's good enough, and a lot of people fell for this. So we figured we actually got to invent something better, and we've been thinking of the security aspects of purchasing a lot better after this incident. The second problem with the SMS was pricing. We only had 2 price points initially, like 79 cents and 1.5 euros each, roughly. And obviously for a virtual good, having just 2 prices is not very flexible. And increasing and it's not good for commissions either, because typically operators charge you a constant cost per message. So with the lower message price point ended up not being very good business, and we couldn't sell that many items with the more expensive price point either, because we didn't have goods that were so valuable and good for the player, so they didn't want to buy stuff at the more expensive rate. So it wasn't actually the pricing going to work out as well. But before we actually started fixing this problem, what the users invented is their own currencies. So enter phase 2. We allowed trading from item day 1, and so the item aftermarket actually kicking off before the currency market as a result. Because when you have an economic system where people are participating in the economy, can trade and pass value, economies just need a currency. Like you need something that you can use to value things in the currency. So what ended up happening is that there was this chair that was very cheap and prominent, and there was oversupply of them. So the users chose to value everything in chairs. And so you might have this inventory of like 50 chairs that you use to pass on. So like there was this other item that you wanted, so you pass like 10 chairs to the other guy who passed the item back, and the chairs started going around in the economy. So the amount of chair sales shot up fairly nicely. And that wasn't very convenient and easy. But we're actually still seeing this happening. This is a fairly or a screenshot I took only a couple of weeks ago, where in England a fan site has been publicizing the values of items, and they're using CSCs and RDEs in this chart to value the items here, which are the sofas and rubber ducks. So the emerging currencies that like the dynamics of the emerging currencies that started out like pretty much from day one, they've stuck ever since, and we haven't been able to get rid of that. So like if you're doing virtual economy, watch out for emerging currencies. They're more or less bound to happen. Okay, going forward, it's 2001. We launched Habbo UK, and there suddenly got the problem of needing to supply more than one web method of payment. So in UK, not nearly as many kids had mobile phones, and the premium SMS integration between operators just wasn't working too well. So we had to put in like more ways of buying the money, and then needed a way to split bigger transactions into smaller sums. So we had to enter the Habbo credits as a result. And this really, like when you go back into 2001, there were only a few companies in the world really offering proper virtual currencies, and it was a very hot topic at the time. But the general opinion seemed to be that virtual currencies aren't going to work, and nobody's going to be interested in them. And indeed, most of the companies offering the virtual currencies of that time just died away, because there wasn't anything interesting that you actually could buy with them, versus the couple of games that had the currencies, such as us, where the currency actually made sense. So we entered the phase 3 of how the economy has worked with the paid currency. And the value we chose at that point was roughly like 15 cents each for a credit, which I think, I can't actually remember exactly why we chose this, but I think it's probably a result of having had the 79 cents SMS message equaling one item in the currency. So we kind of like thought that, okay, let's the smallest unit of value, let's make that one item. So the super cheap items like the ducks only cost 1 credit. Regular items were like maybe 2 or 3, premium items 4 to 15 credits each. And obviously, like this was a fundamental change in the economy, where we used to have this really, really simple model where the only faucet of value into the economy was the SMS messages, where just like that amount of messages coming in, and that's the revenue of the company. And the items pulled up. There was a secondary market that people used to pass the value to each other. And some items may be getting out of the circulation when they stop playing. So in practice, there wasn't any sync for the value pulling up in the item pool. And went into this new model of having the credit pool, into which the value pulled up that got through the item catalog into the item pool. And I don't think we actually really understood what we were doing at that point. So in hindsight, having had a economics degree at this point would have been really, really good. And the impact of this is that when you have a currency in your system, the value starts to pull up. And the problem here is if you are marketing a virtual good and there's pooled up value in the currency, like you might be increasing the amount of currency that your users are spending, but it doesn't necessarily reflect in any of the sales of the currency. So there's added layer of complexity in making revenue with your virtual currency sales. So what you should be doing is really looking at how much of the currency is being spent, how much is flowing in, and if there's high level accumulation, you're running in danger. And the persistent goods, actually, they have the same problem, which wasn't visible at first at all. So again, like what you should be looking out for is the accumulation of goods in your economy as well if you're doing persistent goods. That's where we are. So the problem with persistent goods really is that it's a great value proposition for the users because they get to keep the stuff, and it's very easy to understand because that's kind of like the way the real world works, even though it doesn't, because real world stuff breaks, and you don't want to keep the stuff there for eternity. And so you actually need to deal with item value inflation and item inflation as well. But so the more elegant way that many of the companies are using is obviously like non-persistent value that you buy with the goods, such as services and expendable items. But here, if we're mixing service sales or subscription with persistent goods sales, it's difficult. It's not something that you can necessarily do in your system, because subscription and virtual goods sales are actually, they're radically different business models, and putting them in the same service, like, you need to think about that very carefully on how you do that, because with subscriptions, the revenue model is linear. So when someone subscribes, they're getting like constant amount of value in, and virtual goods, when you're selling currency, you get actually a power law curve of how the value behaves. So if you split your customers into segments, the amount of value they can put into the service. With subscriptions, it's constant value, like no matter which user segment you're using or looking at. But with virtual currency sales, the highest spenders on the right-hand side of the graph, you can get like 100 times more money out of them than the rest of the players. So the whole value proposition of how the value flows in the system is radically different from subscriptions and virtual goods sales. But you can actually combine them. The way we did that is the Habbo Club that we launched way back then, where the monthly subscription into the service is actually paid with the virtual currency and not with the credit cards. So it's just another sink from the credit pool. And what we did is the core value proposition of the club is very different from the rest of the goods. So it doesn't like double dip into the pockets of the users, and it's really understandably easy. So with the club, you get this cool avatar, and with the items and you're getting from the catalog, you decorate the rooms and do collecting. And the club membership really is optional, but the way it's been done, like your avatar is not very cool unless you subscribe. So there's a huge social pressure in actually subscribing into the club, which greatly adds into the memberships. So we're draining away the credits from the pool by giving subscription. Then fast forward to 2005, when we started noticing that there's a worrying trend where the amount of people who were trading but not paying started to increase. And even though we were seeing a lot more paying accounts emerge in the system, actually seeing that a lot of people are enjoying the service without paying us anything was obviously bad. And this was obviously due to the amount of value pulling up in the system. And which begged the question of if trading, aftermarket, allowing trading allows people to opt to not pay, why allow trading in the first place? Because we did allow that, and there was a big question of this discussion about whether we should actually stop trading altogether. And turns out obviously it's a great piece of content for the traders, so they spend a lot more time in the service if they can trade. And the really big bit of this is that the item value speculation emerges when you do allow trading. So the whole value proposition of virtual goods changes when you do allow it for trading, because you suddenly start to get these items that where the value starts to shoot up. And this actually correlates to increased sales. So the trend we're seeing here is the more people trade, the more we're actually monetizing on them. So again, like power law curve emerged where the people who trade the most actually monetize the most. And I'm sure like how many other services actually seen this trend, but I would assume that it's actually present in practically all the virtual economies where you use paid currency and allow trading. So trading is actually good. And the lesson that I've learned, like looking at like this data and other, is you should actually expect power law curves everywhere. Never look at a piece of metric that tells you the average behavior of any user. In all economic behavior, really the top high end of your users, it might be that the highest fifth percentile of people does more than all the other users combined. And the metrics that we used to have for a lot of the behavior, it just didn't accurately describe what's really going on in the economy. And actually doing proper distribution graphs is really important in making sure that you understand what's going on. Looking at classic economics, actually most of the economic theory says that it shouldn't matter. But when you need to design your economy and actually do the things and construct your game in a way that works for the players, this actually is important. But going back to the problem of allowing trading and seeing these people who weren't trading or weren't giving us money because they got all the value in trading, turns out the problem really wasn't the fact that they were trading as opposed to the currencies that we're using in trading. So again, we hit the sofas and the ducks here. So the people doing the active trading bit and not giving us money owned a huge pile of these emerging currency items. So they were using these as the currencies. So they had no pressure whatsoever in investing the currency that we were selling them, which was the driving the revenue of the company. So the very hard decision that we had to make, but like obvious in hindsight, was enabling the trading of the paid currency. And I know a lot of companies still aren't doing this, but from economics perspective, it doesn't make any sense to not do that. So the economic theory for allowing the trading really was that the most liquid currency in that's tradable is bound to win because liquidity is important for currencies, and it just makes the currency more usable. And if the paid currency wins out to be the most prominent currency in the trading market, it should actually become dominant and increase the spending of the currency. Because it doesn't really matter who spends the money that you're selling to the player base, as long as the spending is maximized. And like obviously, like we had people argue that it's really bad for somebody who's not giving us the money having access to the currency. But saying that is kind of like the same as saying that in a family of like mom and dad and 2 kids, it's not okay for the kids to spend the money because they didn't earn it. But we probably all know that giving the kids the money is like one of the easiest ways of increasing the spending or like the pressure to spend in the family. So just allow everyone to spend. So indeed what happened is before we allowed the trading, the amount of people buying the currency and spending the currency was equal. And there were more traders than buyers. And after the change, obviously the amount of spenders started to increase over the amount of buyers. And so like there's this new huge pressure in inserting more currency in the economy because it became really, really desirable. And this ended up leading into having more buyers for the currency. But there were a couple of unanticipated side effects to this that we really didn't see come in. First is that the smallest possible value that the currency you have in the system defines the smallest unit value in the market, really. And what I mean by that is before the credit trading, the ducks were worth like roughly 0.1 credits. And after the trading was enabled, the value of the duck rose up to 1 credit. And this is really irrational because obviously you could just like stack up the ducks and give 10 for the exchange of 1 credit. But that's not how humans work. We're really irrational sometimes. And there's actually, I know there's lots of speculation in classic economics on whether this phenomena is real or not. and I can vouch that it really is real. The value, the smallest unit of value of your currency, that's going to be the smallest value that any of the items in the economy can express. So like a lot of the items went really hugely up in the aftermarket, and we accidentally by that we accidentally increased the total value of the item pool in the economy very, very significantly, which had negative effects on the long run. The second thing that we didn't, or we kind of anticipated but didn't see to the full extent, was the way we implemented the currency trading is like we didn't change the trading UE, so that you would have typed the number of like how many credits you want to trade, as opposed to coming up with this new item in the catalog which you can buy with the credits, and it's redeemable back into the value of the original purchase price. So and it's a regular item that you can actually use to decorate the rooms. So we eventually started to see rooms like this, where so here's a like active trader who's cashed in all the rare items that he's acquired over the years. So there's like roughly like $4,000 worth of virtual currency in gold bars in this room. And this currently it's the most popular trading room in the UK instance of the world right now, because it's just cool, and this is what all the traders aspire to. So they want to see that someone's actually been super good in the trading game. Obviously, the user, I think this particular user has only given us like $50 total over the years. So it's cool but scary. And while working on this credit trading thing, the other question that we actually started asking ourselves is it possible to fix the inflation problem for the items? Because we had the persistent goods, and those were pulling up as well, and the value increase, like with the value increase of the ducks, like going really hugely up in value, is it possible to establish a sink for persistent goods after the fact? And turns out it's possible. I'm like inventing this for, say, like this Eureka moment where we implemented this Ecatron that allows you to recycle your items. So you put 5 items into the Ecatron, you get random item back. Here's what it looks like. It's again like a piece in the catalog where you can like take your ducks or whatever crap you have in the inventory and shove it into Ecatron and get cool items back. And this ended up being really, really successful. So we're seeing like in the order of like hundreds of thousands of items being deleted the first day when this went out. So like a lot of the low value items that actually were driving large parts of the trading economy actually just disappeared, which increased the demand for the higher value items, and which ended up being good for the sales. But going back to this $4,000 room, it's pretty obvious that this picture indicates that there's some inflation in the economy, and inflation, it's bad. It has if the more value has piled up, the more likely it is that you're going to start to be seeing effects like mentioned before, where if you market the virtual good, people will start to spend the virtual currency to get the item, but it doesn't necessarily mean that any of the actual sales of virtual currency increase at all, because people are just spending money off from the pool of credits or currency. So the primary market currency sales that drive your revenue actually become unstable if you have inflation. And it was actually pretty amazing. Like I was in this roundtable just before this talk, and people were saying that they don't actually think that inflation of the paid currencies is a problem. But I can tell you it is. You need to deal with it. The inflation of the primary paid currency, it can be a huge problem. And the way it just manifests itself, that you're going to be selling less. And the second thing that's really bad if you have inflation is that the secondary market prices of items paid and traded with the paid currency, those obviously start to go up. And when new players start to enter the market and trade, the value of the secondary market items just starts to become so high that they can't enter the market at all. So like new player coming in, like seeing that, okay, like there's these really cool items that I want to get in the aftermarket, but they cost like $200 each. And when a new player sees that, they're just going to give up. they're not going to bother with like participating in the economy because they know that they would have to spend too much money in order to start participating, and you don't want that to happen. And then thirdly, what happens is that investing or buying more items actually starts to become a really bad deal if you have inflation, because the value of the good just crashes the moment you buy it, like if there's huge inflation in the secondary market. So again, like for new players, like they go and see your like item catalog, and they notice that, oh, holy crap, like after I buy this item, like it just like the value is crashed, it's no use in trading anymore. So if you want to drive the sales, you actually need to avoid inflation. And this bit here is really a double whammy, because if the catalog of items that you're selling is the primary sink in your economy for draining the credits away from the circulation, if people stop buying from the catalog, it just makes the inflation even worse. But how to measure? Measuring inflation in virtual economies, it can be tricky, because especially what the problem that we've been seeing is that the population of the virtual world has been like shooting up over the years like crazy. And when you have the population size increasing, it obviously can very conveniently hide the fact that you have inflation in the first place, because it's just like the money just gets spread around to more people, and like the pooling up of the money it's not going to be visible at all. And because the user base grows, it means that the acceptable size of the credit pool or the currency pool starts to grow as well. So like you're measuring against a moving target, and that's very, very difficult. But the good thing here is that like if you had no inflation at all, the average amount of currency that players need to actually trade and participate should be fairly constant. So the metric that you actually can use is checking out how much cash you have in the economy, and checking out how many people you have trading in your economy, and just divide 1 by 2. So taking the amount of accumulation, sorry for the maths, taking the accumulation of how much money that's pooled up in your economy, looking at the traders, dividing these, and you're going to be starting to see the trend of if the amount of money per trader starts to go up, and if it does, you have inflation. The second thing that we're doing that's proving out to work pretty well is like this consumer price index thing, which I know like CCP does this as well. So you pick a set of items, preferably like if you have these emergent currency items that are really valuable and used a lot in your trading economy, and put up a shopping basket of stuff, and start to see like how the aftermarket value of these items how is it changing, and that's an index for you that's going to be like very good for knowing exactly how much inflation you have. So, and the biggest cause for inflation that we used to have, which we stopped doing, is giving out the paid currency for free. So what I know many companies are actually doing is saying that, yeah, like when users come, we can give them a bit of currency and they get started, and it's good for the sales. And indeed, it actually does work on the short term. Because we've been doing, like what we saw is like when we gave up the currency is like the sales increased on the short term greatly, and like people got in, but it actually did add to the amount of currency in the pool greatly, and that's a huge problem. But and the reason why we're doing this obviously is rewarding users, and like how do you reward the users if you can't do that with the primary currency, which is the most desired thing? And like item rewards, they're pretty cool, but production of cool items is not sustainable in the same way that just like increase in the counter in the databases. So what we did is we implemented dual currencies. Totally new economic model. But we did it like we had this pixel art style, so we named the secondary currency the pixels. And created the earned currency, which made the system considerably more complicated. So now we actually had like 2 separate connected economies that we started need to manage for the pixels as well as the credits. And how we're using this, the pixels, like you earn them, whereas with the credits, that's the both currency. And the credits are primarily good for the persistent goods and the Habbo Club, some expendables. And the pixels are, we decided from the get-go that we're not going to go into the item accumulation problem with the pixels. So that's a very hard problem to solve. So you only get expendables with the pixels, plus like some discounts on the primary market sales. And decided like that there's a very clear purpose for these two currencies now, where the credits are for monetization, and anything to do with retention, conversion, supporting the primary market, that happens with the pixels. And you indeed can use like cross-monetize even with the earned currency. I'm only going to give you one example because like this is part of the secret sauce. So like what seems to work pretty well here, the cars that the users are driving through, that's bought with the pixel. So it's like this cool effect that you get on the avatar when you go around. So you have this like nice little car game that you can buy into with the earned currency. But obviously the items used to build the track and so the racetrack stuff and the tires and everything, that's bought with the credits. So we're giving something of value to the users with the earned currency, but in order to get the big value out of it, you actually need to spend the paid currency as well. So like they're really interlinked in the perceived value for the players, and that's it, really does the trick quite often. And the question that I had to answer at this point, like, is multiple currencies, is it simple or complex? Because like with the graph, like there's more boxes in it, like it looks like the whole system is actually more complicated now. And many people saying that I'm just using one currency in the real world. Why do we need more than one in Habbo? And like the one currency in real world argument is very, very silly. I'm personally like, I'm dealing with like 3 like monetary units on a daily basis, like not daily basis, but every year. I have like 3 frequent flyer point systems. There's like 4 different bonus cards for grocery stores in my pocket. I get points on my credit card. There's like shares and options in the company that I have. I have my mortgage that's really virtual. I'm going to see the pension fund money like in like 35 years if I'm really, really lucky. So that's like super virtual. So it's not like we're not dealing with multiple currencies in the real world at all times anyway. So like why not just like take the existing systems of these virtual currencies that we're dealing with and apply them to virtual worlds. So I've been actually like playing with this idea of having this like frequent purchaser bonus point system for spending the money in the world itself, because that's an established model that works really, really well in the real world. Haven't done that yet, but I'm fairly sure that actually would work great. And anyway, like anyone who thinks the taxation system in the real world that just uses this one currency is really simple must be insane. So with one currency, it's a one-size-fits-all system. And you can't optimize that for anything whatsoever, and it's bound to become complicated. Whereas with multiple currencies, it's more systems that you need to look into, but each one can actually be optimized and kept really simple. So like adding more simple systems is probably easier to manage. And the one thing that you want to avoid, and I want to avoid as a designer, is exceptions. Because exceptions like non-tradable items that pull up, that are hard to get rid of and don't actually support the economy itself, just mess things up. And looking at that, people like are an example of games that really has gone wild with the currencies. If you want more reasons to implement multiple, like World of Warcraft, they have like 39 currencies now. People know gold, but there's like crap loads of these tokens that you can earn in going into the dungeons to get cool stuff in. So like some designers have actually gone pretty wild in implementing a lot of currencies. But the interesting bit here actually, like most of these like secondary currencies, they're not really real currency systems, as opposed to like small closed loops next to the main economy. But they get the benefit of looking like a real economy and being connected to the main economy. So they're really attracted to the players. And then, actually going into very recent, like last year, we had this new thought that, given that we knew that removing friction in the credit spending in the past by allowing the credit trading increased sales, and we saw this correlation between trading, like active traders trading a lot more or spending a lot more, would removing friction in the trading economy, would that increase spending? And decided that, yeah, let's experiment with this. So what we did is implemented this official marketplace of goods that we didn't have before that. And the economy theory behind this system being that if we remove friction in the trading, it should increase the amount of people participating in the trading. And like it shouldn't really matter what kind of trading you're participating in, because if it correlates to spending, like marketplace should be pretty good as well. And then talking about removing friction, the way the trading used to work in Habbo was just plain horrible. If you wanted to sell something, you just like went to one of the fan sites, look at the weird graph saying like how many Habbo Club sofas or rubber ducks your stuff was worth, and then like went through your inventory of checking like if there's anything that's actually valuable that you can maybe try to sell, and then started running around the whole world trying to find somebody to actually buy the stuff. And since many of the sellers think that it's a really good idea to yell people in the room like, yeah, like say 333 if they want to buy this item. So everyone else in the room who actually gets really annoyed with the people spamming the screen. So you get kicked out of rooms a lot. So it's a bad experience for the seller. And like maybe after half an hour you find the guy who wants the item that you got, and then you need to haggle about the value of the item and end up doing a trade that you actually didn't want to do in the first place. And getting like finding people who wanted to sell you the stuff they wanted was as difficult as this. So in economic terms, like a lot of supply and demand for the items didn't actually ever meet, and so there was a huge amount of friction. So the way the marketplace works now is like any item in your inventory, you just have this one button that posts the item onto the official marketplace. You're going to see the average value of the item, like recent trading, in there, and then just post it up. And we're using the like stock market model, where the buyer and seller doesn't actually know who's the other party in the trade, for the simple reason that if you actually did see who's the guy offering the item, you'd actually be able to just search the guy in the world and circumvent the whole marketplace. And with the buyers, we kind of like want keep the people safe, because if you know that there's someone that you just gave the hundreds of credits to, like when you bought the item, like we don't want the buyer to actually start hassling the original seller. And this seems to work pretty good. There's the actual valuation charts, so you see like how the value of the individual items has developed over the years, or like over the past 30 days, plus the amount of items that has been traded. And then what I wanted to do with this is just like give out the graphs, because it makes the whole trading experience more nicer. And indeed, we're actually seeing a behavior where active traders are spending a lot more time in the service by just like looking through these graphs, because they're playing the trading meta game and they think that the data is really valuable. So we're seeing people like spend 2 hours just like browsing through the catalog and like seeing if there's something valuable that they can buy. So the theory actually was proven correct. We saw a great increase in the amount of, or the probability of players starting to participate in the trading as a result of removing the friction. And business-wise, it's actually been pretty good too. But again, there were a couple of small surprises here. One thing we underestimated is the players were thinking that the regular trading of like really meeting somebody and trading in the game wasn't that safe at all. And with the marketplace, the whole of the user-to-user like interaction is just abstracted away totally. And so people think that it's actually a really safe way of trading, even though like all the prices in the marketplace are again set by the players themselves. So there's no real security, any like that, or that much more security than the other trading. But this seems to have driven a lot of the participation in the marketplace. And the second surprise was that there's still a huge amount of arbitrage in the system. So you can actually buy the same item like real cheap or real expensive, depending on like if you participate in the marketplace or if you go into the rooms. So even though the value data is public to players, there's a lot of people who just don't bother looking at it at all. And even in the marketplace, where when you're posting an item, you're going to see the number of what's the actual value. People seem to ignore that. So like there's still like you can go and browse the marketplace, and there's like really good deals for items right now in there. So theoretically, you could actually like make a lot of virtual currency by just looking at like what people, let's say, stupid deals that people are selling through the marketplace. Now, the rules of the marketplace are actually, I need to talk about this a bit as well. The posting item takes, you pay like 0.2 credits. So we're selling these 5 marketplace posting offer tickets for 1 credit. And the offer is only valid for 2 days. So obviously there's some revenue coming in from people just posting the stuff. But the important bit here is the actual commission. We're taking 1% commission on the price of the sale if the actual sale happens. But if you paid attention to the beginning of the talk where I said how valuable the currency is, indeed the individual item prices are fairly low in the credit currency. So for example, look at the club sofa being sold here, it only costs 7 credits. And obviously you can't take 1% off from 7 credits. So we round up the commission to 1 credit, which turns out to be 14% of this trade. And because it's the smallest number that we can possibly take from the players, they kind of like accept that it's fine. Some people are complaining, but it's good because it's only 1 credit. So indeed, the actual commission that we're charging is anywhere between 50 to 1%. Because like you can post like 1 credit item, we'd add like the 1 credit on top of that. So like it's 50% trade. If you actually count the 0.2 credits the seller posted on this, we're actually taking 54.5% commission total on the sale, which is outrageous, but works. But this actually like begs the question of how valuable should virtual currencies be in the first place? Because if we can't do fair trades with the players because the currency is so expensive, isn't that a problem? So Habbo coins, that's like 15 cents each. Facebook credits are like 10 cents. And like indeed, if you look at the average price of WoW Gold, currently that's 1.25. So it's much more granular. And in WoW, indeed, like there's like 200 million time difference between the cheapest price that you can possibly buy with 1 copper versus like the highest end gold prices in the market. So if you're thinking of how valuable your currency should actually be, like doing something that's more granular than our 15 cents is probably a good idea. Because of the smallest possible value expressible by the currency determines the smallest unit of value in good and bad, including the marketplace commissions. So decide your scale early on. And this actually boils down to integrating other payment mechanisms as well, because there's a lot of companies out there currently offering like managed currencies and ways to get the money in. And like you actually really want to be in control over your currency. So if you're just blindly taking a third-party currency like the Facebook credits in, you're not going to be in control of what's going on and with the value of the currency. And converting between virtual currencies is very confusing anyway. So like think about how valuable your currency is going to be very, very carefully. I don't think there's a silver bullet, so I can't actually tell you what to choose. It's going to be interesting like what valuation ends up winning in the end. But I'm sure it actually will have effects in how well your systems are going to work. But talking about payment networks, one of the last things I want to talk about, indeed, like when we launched UK, we only had like these 3, like SMS and a couple like obscure prepaid cards. But we've added over 100 payment integrations between 2001 and 2010. So there's massively huge amount of different ways of getting the currency in Habbo. And it's one of the reasons why we're doing so well in the currency sales. And the reason to do this is that there's huge variety in commission structures depending on market, and just many systems not being viable globally. So if you try to charge using SMS in Brazil, the operators seem to think that 60% commission is fine. So it doesn't make any sense, like business-wise, to offer SMS there. And simultaneously, like credit cards, they're really common in US, but when you go to Europe, there's actually countries where not too many people do have credit cards. And for teenagers, they don't have the credit cards themselves anyway, so like you actually need to get to the pockets of the parents, which is also a problem. So this is not a simple thing to optimize, and like don't trust any of the companies who say that they can offer global solutions that are going to work exactly the same globally, because it's not possible to do. I can tell you, they're just like lying if they claim that's possible. And optimizing the networks is true art in itself as well, like how to make sure that your commission structures are as low as possible, and the usability of how to buy the currency is as good as possible. So it's very difficult to do well, but if you want to operate globally, you actually need to start looking into this, and it's part of the why I think like secret sauce of why we're doing it so well. And I'm definitely not going to tell you how to do that. It's a learning process, but I recommend that you actually start looking into it as well. But the big balancing problem here really is that the primary market and the secondary market of selling the currency and what's happening in the game, they follow the different rules. And there is no magic circle in your game if you're selling virtual currency, because what ends up happening is that the primary market, like what's happening in the real world, does actually affect how much value is going to be entering your virtual world. So like last year, I'm sure many companies saw that suddenly the virtual currency sales started dropping down, but it doesn't mean that the participation levels in the in-game economy might have dropped at all. So there was this funky situation where like currency flowing in didn't change, but people started to spend a lot. So like the whole dynamics of how your virtual economy works is actually going to be affected by the real world. So like if you've been thinking that you don't need to deal with what's happening in the real world inside your virtual economy, you actually they are interconnected, and you actually do need to deal with that. So like just to give an example, like if there's huge inflation in the secondary market, what you might need to look into like how to adjust the prices of the primary market, like how much does your virtual currency cost, and if you up the price, like you're going to screw your new customers because they don't want to pay more for your currency, and if you don't up the price and deal with the inflation, like you're also going to screw your new customers because the inflation is only going to get worse. So real world inflation, like deal with it. The second thing that I'm pretty conscious of is the currency exchange rate changes and inflation. So for example, looking at UK pound price, like when we started out, like pound was really strong and valuable, and like it then has ended up changing quite significantly over the years. So when you're operating globally and selling currency in one of the markets, like it might really, like if the local currency starts to change, it might really screw your in-game economy as well if you don't actually start to adjust the primary market by what's happening in the real world. So and looking again, like concrete example of this, like if you start to rely on Facebook credits, like how do you know it's going to be stable? How is Facebook going to change this? And like will they actually even continue allowing intermediate virtual currencies in apps? So looking at the inflation thing, like if there's like 3% inflation in the real world, it's going to mean that in a couple of years, the 7 cents that you're getting from Facebook is actually going to be 6.5 cents. And I doubt they're going to be increasing the price of their currency, which means that you're going to be starting to adjust the in-game prices of your items once the value of Facebook money starts to go down. So it's a tricky thing. So the evolution, we've gone a long way. 2000, we started really simple. 2010, we're considerably more complicated, but we pretty much, at least for now, solved the inflation problem internally, and we know how to operate it. So keep looking at how your system works and changing it and really monitoring, and things will work out well in the long run. So does economics matter for virtual worlds, and do virtual worlds need an economic system in the first place? Yeah, I think so, definitely. In my opinion, if you want to run a virtual community that's sustainable on the long run, you actually do need an economic system, and you need to manage it with economics, really do proper analysis on it. And this really does mean that I mean economics in the broader sense of the word, where it's not just about looking at the flow of how value passes within the system, but also like how to keep your world safe, because people don't want to invest into your world if it's not safe and trustworthy. So like the whole economy, the whole community, it really needs to work in the greater sense. So unleash your inner economist and do well for your world. Thank you. I think there is 5-ish minutes for questions, if there's any.
I was just curious. One of the things you mentioned with the SMS payment was that there had been some social engineering type fraud.
Yeah.
But as you've diversified the number of ways you can pay, and as you've made your in-game goods tradable, how are you dealing with what must be a lot more fraud from a lot more different places?
No, actually, okay, so the question was like, has the fraud diversified as we diversified in the payments mechanisms?
Yeah.
So, not really. Obviously, the way we fixed the fraud problems in the SMS is that now the messages don't identify the user. You actually get this credit code back that you have to type in after you signed in, so you can't cheat the system anymore. But it hasn't really gone up. Could possibly be because we're not reliant on credit cards. So like with SMS, it's fairly hard to cheat, and for many of the prepaid cards especially, you can't really cheat because you just like go and buy the prepaid card with cash. So the payment fraud hasn't actually shot up that much at all. And like if you actually do provide enough payment systems that you're not relying on credit cards, I think that's a really efficient way of protecting against RMT. Because RMT is hard, like RMT basically requires that your users are using credit cards because it's one of the easy ways of getting the money. And if the RMTers would need to start integrating like SMS payments into getting the virtual currency, it's not going to be that lucrative anymore. And I think it's a win-win in many ways.
Do you allow the trading of the secondary virtual currencies?
No.
Okay.
We're thinking about that, but for now, no. If we actually ever did that, we'd probably go with the similar mechanism like what Puzzle Pirates is using, where there's a like marketplace that you can like blindly sell and buy the currency. Because that like if somebody would then start to grind and like gold farm the secondary currency, the value of that would just go down and it wouldn't be profitable anymore.
This might be more of a marketing question, but I'm curious, since you've tweaked your system a little bit over the last couple of years, I assume that you've probably wanted to let your users know ahead of time before you were doing that. Was there a lot of preparation in getting ready to change that system, and were you aware of, like, did you have a campaign set up to let your users know that these systems were changing, or did you just sort of change it overnight?
We usually just screw up with the users and not let them know in advance.
All right. Cool.
Depends. Like on some of the changes we have warned them, but some of the changes not. So like the big changes, like because it's tricky. If you tell them in advance, they're just going to prepare for it, and then like so. I wouldn't want to put the users into like how should I put it? Like some people will know how to prepare and make a lot of profit, and most of the people won't. So like I'm for the average guy who wouldn't be able to prepare for it at all, and like let's not warn them in advance.
Thank you.
Nicolas from Motion Twin. Given you have some issue with you...
can you speak up a bit?
Given you have like some issue with your credit level, which is one credit is 15 cents, is there any reason you have not been multiplying by 10 already?
Sorry, I really can't. Like there's echo. So.
Sorry. Is there any reason you haven't been multiplying your credits by 10 already? Everything, all the price?
Well, we could. Obviously, with the marketplace commissions, that might not be that good idea. The main reason we never did that is we have prepaid cards out already in distribution. So we have like physical goods that we need to reprint and redistribute, and that's a huge cost. So we're definitely thinking about doing that, but it's like once you actually had to set the price, it's actually there's complications in changing it that might arise, such as like just having these stupid cards out there. I guess that's it. Thank you, and please remember to return the evaluation sheets.